Okay, well, now we'll get on to our discussion led by Gabriel Luna from Trojan Storage and Anne-Marie DeCoster, who's now an independent consultant at AM DeCoster. So we're looking forward to this discussion about customer experience and technology. I think some of you have already seen the clip that Gabriel did such a great job putting together of Antonia Hock, our keynote speaker at Napa. But we're going to go ahead and Gabriel and Anne-Marie, why don't you take it over from here?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much. I had the distinct honor of not only listening in to Antonia, seeing her in person, meeting her as well. And just on a quick side note, as a speaker and presenter myself, she was so powerful. And that's what I told her. I was like, you articulated every word, and I loved how you emphasized your points, and she was an amazing speaker. So it's my pleasure to introduce everyone who hasn't seen her yet to Miss Antonia J. Hock. She's a leading expert in customer experience, and she's known for her work at Microsoft and the Ritz Carlton. She combines traditional service and excellence with modern technology to help businesses exceed customer expectations. As a keynote speaker, Antonia offers actionable insights that not only drive brand loyalty and remarkable results, and making her a pioneer in the field of customer experience. Turn it over to Anne.
We're going to be joining Antonia mid-presentation, and she's going to be talking about the 4 steps of service. And she'll describe it as a written service strategy that every employee uses every time throughout every customer touch point, whether it's in person, online. Just think about all the ways we touch customers. It's great to hear her. She's truly the pro on this subject, and you're really going to enjoy this. If you weren't there live at Napa, we're going to take it over to Antonia now from the Owner Summit in Napa last May, joining her mid-presentation.
So if you're going to anticipate or you're going to do steps of service, you're going to think about creating great experience, this is where it starts. So this is the first concrete takeaway that we give every single company, and you see it. We just talked about Chick-fil-A. You see this at Chick-fil-A all the time. Steps of service. Now, many companies would love to do steps of service. Few have the discipline, and that's really the differentiator. So let's talk about why you would want to do this. First of all, what are steps of service? It's a written service strategy that every employee uses. It's also the same strategy you build into your digital footprint. So customers want to have a continuous experience, whether it's through an app, whether it's online, or it's an in-person employee. They want to have the same steps of service all done well. Now, it's got to be practiced by everyone. It can't be that one exceptional employee that does it and no one else does it, because you won't get any brand lift. It's got to be part of what you do every day. So, knowing that very few brands have the discipline to do this, if you can do it, you will stand out. Right? So let's look at these steps of service. There are 4, and you do them in every interaction, every time. That means when someone asks, where's the restroom? 4 steps of service. When someone says, I'm ready to sign a contract, 4 steps of service. I have an email inquiry, 4 steps of service. It has to be done consistently. The first is a warm welcome using the person's name. The studies on this are super clear. If you use someone's name more times in an interaction, you automatically become more memorable. There's a study that says it's got to be 8 times. Of course, you're looking to do it naturally, not, hi, Bob. How are you, Bob? Right? You don't want to do it that way. But the more you can use someone's name and a warm greeting, you're off to a great start, right? The second, it says anticipate and fulfill. Most people only fulfill, are always in fulfillment mode. Answer my question, nothing more. If you stop at fulfillment, you'll never get the brand lift. And most of you know what they're going to do next. So don't stop by just answering the question, anticipate the need. The last 2. 3 is about asking whether you satisfied and delighted the customer. People love to be asked. It's also an opportunity to express gratitude. They have choices, lots of choices. They chose you. Constantly making sure they're happy is important. And then the last, generally, this is the one most people really miss, is a really nice warm goodbye. It's the last impression you make. And generally, we love to say hello, we hate to say goodbye. But that last impression is a very important one. So if you're going to do those 4 steps of service every time, your brand will become known for this. And I think particularly in an industry like the storage industry, not very many firms are doing this, right? It's very transactional, not unlike Chick-fil-A, but Chick-fil-A does these things every time. When you go through the drive-thru, they say, "It was my pleasure to be of service today," okay, for your chicken sandwich.
So every interaction, every time, including where is the restroom? Here are the 4 steps of service. We're going to hold them up here on the screen for a few minutes because I think it takes a little time to absorb them and think about how to implement them. And I have to say that since I saw Antonia, I've been thinking about how to use these, not only in professional circumstances, but also in private circumstances. It's a mindset. And so, we're one of the things that we'd like to discuss today is how can you get yourselves into the mindset? How can you envision your team using this kind of an approach to every prospect and every customer every time? And we're going to open this up to conversation. Thank you so much for turning on your cameras. Why don't we go in? Yes, the gallery mode, we can see everybody. So what about thoughts about habits you'll need to change? Thoughts you'll need to change? Corporate aspects of corporate culture that will need to be modified in order to incorporate this kind of excellence in customer interaction? I'm going to pick on you, Shannon, because you are excellent with the topic of customer experience. You're muted.
That is excellent with my unmute button. It's interesting. I told you I was coming in with my pen ready to go, and I wrote down all 4 of those, and I was thinking number 1 and number 4, I think, come naturally to me. She said number 4 doesn't really, but to me, they come naturally to me. I also highlighted, have I delighted you today? Oh, my gravy. I don't think I've ever asked that question. I mean, I definitely have asked, does that take care of your need? Is everything okay? Is there anything else that we can help you with? And I think our entire team is trained to do the same. But have I delighted you? Oh, my gravy. What a different expectation that is. My mind's kind of already turning. So excited about that.
Gabriel, I know you've given this some thought and you also demonstrated.
Absolutely. I've been thinking about this actually a lot and how to implement it and what strategies I would use. And it's really, it's modeled down from the leadership would be my first, way of tackling this. And it's really showing up and showing them what this feels like, because it's a feeling. This customer wow factor is a feeling more so. And she couples that in as the experience. And if you can leave your customers who are, again, everybody knows here the 4 Ds, if you can somehow mitigate that worry that they have or this life challenge that they're going through with a few moments of your energy and your time, that's where this transformation happens. And how do we go about then, getting our site staff, on board with that? And I really believe it starts with the company culture. Are you just coming down iron fist and saying, everyone's doing this starting today? I really believe it's getting in there. Now, are you empowering your employees to have this experience themselves? Because I think if anyone, passing on kindness, if you've done something, bought a coffee for someone, it feels good to do that. And, do your employees share that same joy when they, come in? Are they standing up? Are they, meeting that customer? Are they fulfilling these 4 steps? And more importantly, does it make them feel good? If you can get the buy-in for your employees to feel good about it, they're going to do this over and over and over.
So let's hear from some owners, some facility owners. Where can you see a need for this kind of service or an opportunity for this kind of a customer experience in your daily business?
I'll go a little bit. I totally agree with Gabriel about empowering your employees. And I may be jumping the gun. You might be speaking about what Antonio said, but she said that the Ritz Carlton, every employee has $2,000 a day to spend to make a customer's experience right. And that's empowering. That makes an employee feel a sense of ownership. And I do think that culture that, you talked about, Gabriel, is important because the owners have to give their employees that sense of empowerment and accountability. And not $2,000 a day, obviously, but something where they don't have to go, I don't know, I just work here, I have to ask my DM. That's like the worst thing. Of course, some things you have to, but the way they say it, they feel like nothing if they're talking that way to the employees. So that, I think, is a training thing and also a culture thing where you might give your employees certain limits and certain responsibilities and decision-making ability. Anybody else?
I've done this for a long time with a lot of facilities and a lot of employees. Can you see places where you could employ this attitude, this approach to customers in your interactions with prospects, with current tenants?
Certainly, everyone's shy this morning.
I'll jump in again and state, as Trojan, and I'm sure most companies are really kind of moving towards this more tech-centric approach, automation, remote facilities and whatnot. It becomes even more apparent that we really need to take advantage of the second step of anticipation. And this is really where you can, go above and beyond. What they want, what they're going to ask next, that the lease process is pretty streamlined. So what verbiage could you use? What energy could you bring to that conversation that would, lead that customer exactly where they need to go? Something that comes to mind is like the no-key system, where we're creating signage and we're doing all kinds of things to really accompany that experience, because it's not just, hey, do it yourself, good luck. It's really, how do I implement the 4 steps of service when I'm not even there? What other assets can I create? We've taken the time to put QR codes all over the facility, and it's not necessarily even a hub where all information is. We've gone and taken the time to say, if you're at the gate, we're going to have a QR code and information that speaks specifically to that point that you're at. And that video, when you scan, is going to show you about opening the gate. And when you get to the next door, the sliding building door, all the information changes to talk about that door, and the video shows that. And then even the next step, going in, now the next QR codes are going to be different once more, and we're going to be able to show you a video of how to use the app to, locate the next one. And we go back and take all this data and understand, are there any hangups? Are there any one particular point where we get the most scans? And should we then reevaluate that? Again, using your data to and help you anticipate. Not only is it helping on the customer side, with your manager, they know that the next one is, the golf cart ride or all that. But, how can you do that from a digital presence as we move in that direction as well?
And having a different asset for each of those steps enables you to gather that data about which one needs more attention from you to make it more clear. Brian Hull, who has facilities in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, discovered that he had a kind of an elevator. It was a lift, actually, not an elevator. And he needed to put a QR code there to show people how to use it and to give them, it's a quick little safety lesson in it. And that made all the difference in the world at that particular facility because it was remotely run, and that enabled them to solve that problem without having boots on the ground or phone calls.
That's amazing. Those QR codes, that's amazing.
Yes. And that's technology.
Yeah.
It's not
that hard to do, but that's amazing.
It had a great resurgence with COVID, and we found ways to use it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Well, Gabriel, I think that the next video clip, which brings the steps of service into a wholesome conversation about brand equity, might be a good one to play now because it gives a great context for the conversation.
But what I want to do now is I want to step over and start to talk about experience, right? If that's the service side, let's talk about experience. We know everybody that's coming to you is coming to you for a very specific reason. And I love customers that have compelling events. These are a lot of compelling events, no? Reasons people would come and get a storage unit. Death, divorce, disease, disaster, right? Those are pretty big human life events. And anytime you have a human life event, you can build a really compelling experience around it. So, are you thinking that way today? Right? Everybody has a story that's coming to you. Everybody. Imagine standing out for some of the small things you do that bring their stories around storage into something that lives and breathes as part of your brand. So let's talk about how to do it. And I will tell you this, wows always win. They don't have to be big. They don't have to be expensive. Sometimes they don't have to cost you anything at all. It's a way of thinking about your branding, and it's a way your employees act, or it's the way you use technology. And I'm going to give you an example here about a digital wow in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the theory. So I'm going to use a hotel example to illustrate this for you. But this is a little bit like Maslow's hierarchy. Every business has consumer expectations. Bottom rung, you must execute these. It must be flawless. In the hotel world, this is when you come to a hotel, you expect your room to have a bed, you expect it to have a bathroom, you expect it to be clean, you expect the check-in to be efficient, right? Bare bones expectations must be flawless every time. Next thing is requested. I ask you for something, I expect you to do it well, do it quickly. This is where most companies spend all their money, and they get very little ROI out of it. Why? Think back to that slide on economic value and also the S&P results. That didn't say customer service. It didn't say request. It said customer experience. So just because you can fulfill an ask doesn't make you memorable, doesn't make you sticky for customer loyalty. This is like I call down to the front desk and say I want 3 fluffy white bath towels, and you send me up to my room 3 fluffy white bath towels. Great. I'm not going to remember you for that. I'm not going to prefer you for that reason. That will drive no preference in hotel. But they spend a lot of time fulfilling those requests, answering those emails, answering those phone calls. So what really matters? It's at the top. It's unanticipated acts of delight and memory. Right? Those are where all the brand equity is. Why? Because those are the things people remember. If I'm at a hotel and I'm waiting to check in and the front desk line is very, very long, like it was for some of us who checked in on Sunday here, if you stood in that line, you know exactly what I mean. Imagine that you see a very long check-in line and across the way, there's a bar, not unlike this hotel. And that bartender is not busy, but sees that that line is very long. Imagine that bartender takes it upon themselves to fill a whole bunch of glasses with some wine and bring it over to everybody waiting in that line and say, I understand that this is a long line. We're doing our very best to get you through it. I would love to offer you a welcome beverage. Now, that is unexpected. that would have taken a situation that was very burdensome for everybody waiting in line. Suddenly, now we're having a party in line, right? Everybody is having a glass of wine, everybody's relaxing, and it's memorable. So that's what we mean by you've got to move up that progression. Those memories are what create brand equity and referrals and positive reviews and word of mouth and all the things we all want for our businesses. So, closing out, your brand is everything you do every day. Everything every employee does, everything they experience through the apps you provide, the kiosks you provide, the service experience you provide, all of it. But you have to start, we know it's a habit. We know it's a habit. And so you've got to build those habits across the board every day. Your brand is never neutral. So I know we covered a lot of content in 45 minutes. That was a flyby content session, but I really, really appreciate your time to go through all of these things today, and I hope you took away some little nuggets. I also hope you've got questions for me. I know we're going to do a Q&A after Alyssa does her session, but also please put them in the app. You can find me on LinkedIn and also Instagram if you love mountain climbing and mountaineering. Instagram, if you're really interested in all the business elements we talked about today, follow me on LinkedIn because that's where I post a lot of those takeaways. But thank you all. Really appreciate the time.
Antonia really does have a lot of great content on LinkedIn, and that's a great place to go for more examples and just knowledge about how to incorporate this kind of an approach. And, you know, Gabriel, when we were talking about this session, one of the things we discussed was that there's a difference between customer service and customer experience. That there's an attitude, there is just a level of importance that it has. Could you share some thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it's best summed up, as she said, with a towel example, that customer service is fulfilling the actual need. And in the example she uses as ordering, calling on your hotel and saying, I need some more towels. Customer service is fulfilling that need, getting to them as soon as possible with the towels. Customer experience is takes it to the next level, where at any hotel, that's the minimum of service. You call for something and they bring it to you. They've fulfilled your service needs. But to take it to the next level, they came with a batch of warm cookies for you, again, being her example. Now this is memorable. You got not only what you needed, but they took it up a notch to make themselves different from any other hotel that you would have, gotten towels from. So experience is really going to be coupled with service. They go hand in hand, but it's really, in my eyes, what differentiates you from the others. And here at Trojan, at least, we love to pick on the REITs. How do we differentiate ourselves from a public or an extra space? When we talk to our staff and we're educating our staff, we say, go and have the experience yourself first and foremost. I think we're really great about shopping around and going in and seeing the other competitors' experience. How did it make you feel? Did they meet your service needs? Did they do anything above and beyond? We look at their signage. We look at, could we find our unit? We really take in the entire experience from the hat of a possible tenant. This person, as she says, is going through these 4 Ds. And so do they have time? Do they want to look at signs? How easy are we making this for them? And really put the best customer, busy, life involved customer hat on, and then run through the experience and say, where were the hangups? Where could we improve? Where could we help? Something right immediately, kind of, playing off of her example. I think of Trojan, we offer water, and of course we have coffee machine for everybody. But what if on that busy mode, someone got up and walked them over to it, having customer experience. I once upon a time worked at Disneyland, where they do, you don't point and you open hand or two hand when you're taking someone, and you take 5 steps with them. If they say, where's the restroom? You don't say over there. let me take you 5 steps and show them. It's those little nuances that Disney knows all about and how they create experiences with their customer service. You go into Chick-fil-A and you expect that they're going to ask you to refill your drink or possibly put the mat down for you. It's their customer experience is now part of their brand. They're not different. And I think that's it. When you can honestly say that your customer service and your customer experiences are separate, I think what we're trying to do here is really marry the two, that the experience is coupled with the customer service, and that's really going to be the differentiator on what people aren't doing out there.
Liz,
I think,
go ahead. Yeah.
I have a question. Sometimes what we do is not pleasant, and we have lean sales. So, and this is really difficult, and I spend a lot of time in my training with employees on this, is how do we get that message across that we do have to follow our state statute, but do it with a smile and say it nicely and let the customer understand. You know, most businesses, you want to go above and beyond, but there's some cases where we just cannot discriminate and do what the customer wants. And that gets to be a really sticky situation. And from day one, I have to start training my employees how to answer those type of situations.
Right. And I was thinking about how to use the 4 steps of service in a collections call. You know, like you said, not everything we do is pleasant. So
4 steps of service, and your auction ends on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean,
It's difficult. I mean,
it's really
it's
difficult.
really hard. And we try to use I try to train my employees to, some people may disagree, but not to take full responsibility and to try to let, like, I think it was Carol Mixon used to say this, let the customer have some ownership. We're not just auctioning your things off. Here's where you got to a position of here. Now, what can I do to help you? And then I am one of those owners that will look at payment agreements, and thank God Jeff Greenberger's not on this call, but I will look at helping the customer if I've gotten a little tighter in the last couple of years, but if there's a good reason, they lost their job, they have a problem, we do try to go above and beyond. We do try to help them get into a payment agreement, a payment plan, and try to help them overcome that delinquency if we can. Obviously, if they don't respond or they just belligerent and I don't have any money, then there's limited on what we can do. But it's really a difficult situation, and talking about the 4 steps, I mean, it's tough. And I'm trying to empower my staff to be able to answer these as they should, but sometimes they struggle with it as well.
What do you tell them in your training, Pam?
I use some of the verbiage that we are here to help, and we completely understand that life gets in the way and everybody has problems, things happen, and we understand that you have if it's a temporary situation. I'm not talking about the person who's been delinquent day one and just rushes and pays. But if you have a situation and we say, what can we do to help you? How much can you afford? Where can we go? Can we start making the minimum rent plus something towards the balance? Mm-hmm. And then normally I get involved in the agreements just because I want to make sure they're done right. But then we'll do a payment agreement and we'll let them come up with a plan and sign that they agree to this plan and try to give them some flexibility on how they pay. I don't want to go to auction, so I don't sit there and just say, well, if you can't pay the full amount due today, the $1,000, then we're going to auction. I give them a chance. Mm-hmm. I've been known to give too many chances in the past, and so we are trying to limit the chances we give people so they don't take advantage. But, we do understand life gets involved. And so I let my staff talk to them at lien status. If there's a problem, they know that they can bring these options to them. Mm-hmm. There are times I will deny it and say, I'm sorry, we just can't do it. They just, they're 2 months into their contract and they want an agreement and they can't pay, then we're probably not going to offer that unless there's always an exception, unless they're they're in the hospital, they lost their job, they can prove something, and now they can get back on track.
I had an opportunity to interview Joe Cormos recently. He's going to be on the cover of the Messenger Canada. He's one of the pioneers in Canada of self-storage, and he talked about someone who had gone silent. He rented a unit. It was a big unit. He knew it was filled with tools. Well, he actually, he extended the compassion and the grace and held back his manager, said, no, we're not going to auction him. This is not characteristic. And he did turn up 6 months later, and he, I think his welder blew up in his face, and he was burned over most of his body. And he had been in recovery, and he was ready to go back to work. He'd been in the hospital, and he was able to work now, and he needed his tools. And Joe forgave his rent due and gave him a second chance. And he said, that's what being human is all about. And that's, I think, a lot of what Antonia was talking about. I was traveling through Pennsylvania recently and stopped at a few self-storage properties. At a Columbia self-storage, I observed a manager greet a prospect who was moving in, and they walked in the door. She recognized their voices, and she said, is that the sweet voice that was on the other end of the line? And there's your grandma, the other sweet voice. She already knew them. She'd already established rapport with phone calls. She was ready for them. She had their unit right. She made them feel like it was like a stream in the desert. It was like a cup of cool water, because this young lady was in a tough situation, and her grandmother was helping her out of it. And it was all about putting stuff in space. We all rent the same empty space, yet she did it in such a way that both that young lady and her grandmother felt very well cared for. Like they really mattered in a time of distress. Yeah. So I loved to see that. And I know that there are, every one of you, we have managers on, we have owners, we have vendors. I noticed that Ryan is here. Ryan, I wanted to ask you, I know that you are competing for investors. You are actively purchasing self-storage facilities. How do you use some of these approaches in dealing with investors?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Anne Marie. It's a great one. And what I approach investors and customers is actually really similar. It ties into customer service, and it's really the bedrock of how I instill, or what I try to instill into our managers as well. And it starts with this word that has a lot of connotation, and it sounds maybe weird in this context, but it's operating from a foundation, which is love. And growing up, love seems like a cheesy word. It can be tied to a lot of things.
It's amazing.
But really, when I approach investors, when I approach customers, when I approach my managers, there's this foundation that if you're loved from where you are, then you're able to operate and articulate things even when they're difficult. So when I approach investors, I've never taken investor money from someone I don't know. There's friends of friends of friends. So I get on a flight, I meet with them, I get to know them. And things that follow out of love is things like, integrity, character, and then there's the metrics of business, cash on cash, unleveraged yield on return, and all these things. But that's all secondary of like how we operate out of. And tying it into the 4 steps of service, what I also instill in my managers is it's hard to fake love. If I just don't tell my managers to be loving, it also starts with me and it starts with them. And it's being loved simply because you have value, because you exist. One of my favorite slogans is, the best things in life are people. It's not storage, it's not business, it's not things. And really just sharing that with my managers, sharing my heart with investors of what we're not all money oriented, we're capitalistic and profit driven. But at the end of the day, the best things in life are each other, everyone on this call. And when I approach customer service, all of my facilities are remote managed. So we're really big on our call center and our customer service. And I instill in my managers this understanding of once you are accepted and encouraged and loved, you can then handle difficult situations that arise because the foundation is sound. It's being supported, it's being loved. And then when you have a foundation of love, the house of the business is now sound. And so delinquency and auctions are navigated with more of a clear and direct basis. And so I don't know if that sounds cheesy. That's really my heart behind my business, how we've grown, how I approach people, and even how I approach really difficult situations when I review calls where customers aren't easy to love a lot of times. There's a lot of anger and frustration, things that's going on in their life. And so I really drill down on what we're offering as a business, and that my managers do feel loved and supported, and it doesn't always have a great outcome. But that's really the heart and the lifeblood that helps us navigate these difficult things.
That was beautiful, Ryan. Like spot on, perfect.
And I don't think, just to jump in, I don't think using the word love is wrong at all. I think you actually are in the absolute correct direction. I'm reading a book currently and I want to share it with you. It's called The Customer of the Future by Blake Morgan, and I highly recommend it to everyone here. And what they're saying is that there's two types of companies, one that are product centric or one that are tenant centric in our case. And if your position, if your managers, if everyone's focusing on the bottom line, that's the mentality. And that comes again from leadership down. And this is again the full circle. It's really leadership modeling what's important to the company. If it's going to be the money, that's where your concern is going to be. They're going to be concerned about hitting their marks, making their bonuses, and that is their concern. But the moment you are able to switch that culture into this is a tenant, what are we doing for the tenant? Everything is for the tenant. You can forego that metric or whatever you feel you had to do. If it's for the tenant, then you're in the right direction. And then that starts with heart. So I think, again, Ryan, thank you for that. That is super helpful. And Bill Hoffman, I'm going to put you on the spot. You shared a note with me, and I think you used the key word in there. And he said the process of designing the program. And I think this is also where it comes. Not only do you come and show and model this for them, it's actually formalizing it in a designed plan. And this goes back to Liz's comments about how do you deal with these difficult customers. So something that Trojan has done, we actually around rent increase, we've created guides, verbiage for our site staff to empower them for these difficult situations. And it's a big document, but I'll share the 4 points of it. The first one is listen. These people, they half the time they want to vent, and the moment you show that you don't have time for them, that's the opposite of Ryan's mentality, and this is where you're going to get the anger review, which I have the pleasure of responding to. The second one is respond. You give them, you paraphrase back to them their concern, you show a little compassion to their needs. This is going to take it way down really fast. The next one is also confirm. Yes, I did see that happen. I understand you can't afford that. You use verbiage again. You're on their team because we're tenant centric. The rules are still the rules, but I'm on your team. It's not just I'm big bad business. And the last one we do is conclusion. We please understand that this increase reflects the current rental market. We showed you a little compassion, show a little compassion back. And I think when you meet their heart with your heart, that's where the real transformation happens, even if it's a difficult situation. And again, back to Bill's, it's really designing that verbiage, designing the program that empowers your site staff. And again, asking yourself the honest question, are you product centric or are you tenant centric? And are you modeling that? Because it's a direct reflection. If you're concerned again with your stats and your bottom line, that's exactly what your site staff is concerned with as well.
Scott from Store Suite says 2 key words, personalization and communication. So true.
Gabriel, I want to piggyback on what you said there, because I would say that if we used the example that Anne Marie just gave of that woman who greeted the young woman and her grandmother when they came in, if she is forced to be in the position of taking them to auction status 8 months from now, that conversation is going to go a whole lot better when she says, I am so sorry that this has happened. I remember the very first time I spoke with you, neither one of us wanted to be in this position. I absolutely want to help you. That conversation is so much different than dear tenant number 413B, who I've never spoken to, have never showed any care for whatsoever. It's so different. And I would also say that when you focus on that tenant like that, Gabriel, your numbers will take care of themselves. They make it so you don't have to focus on the numbers.
Right. Bill says you cannot delight until you have met their basic customer service expectations. That is so true.
And even as you use the AI tools are actually modeling this too. Some of the newer ones, For example, you're talking about my grandmother's in the hospital and I have my dog in my storage unit. The AI is now intelligent enough to say, I'm sorry about your grandmother. We hope Fido's all right. How do we get it's showing you the computer's smart enough to pull those words in and be compassionate sometimes more than we are because we're so involved. We got 17,000 things we're doing in that moment. So it's really taking that time and tuning in, being mindful, if you would, and leading with heart.
I think it'd be a really good training. Here, I'm putting on my training committee hat, but to do some role playing and asking employees, here are some situations, what would you do? For example, here you're walking down the hall doing a lock check and you see someone moving in and it's really hot in the hallway. What would you do?
Right.
Yeah, or what are the specific situations out there where you can actually delight a customer or anticipate their need versus saying, "Hey, how are you? It's a hot day, isn't it?"
Yeah. Yeah. I was envisioning putting this into place. This is for facilities that have staff on site. You see a moving truck come in, go outside in the summer with bottles of cold water.
Right.
And offer them and take a look at what they're storing and don't let them move in any blue barrels or huge piles of tires. Establish rapport, prevent hazardous waste from filling a unit.
Yeah.
Become memorable. In the winter, you can do it with hot coffee and do it the way Southwest does. They always bring an extra little cup that has a couple of creamers, a couple of sugars, stir stick. And it's that easy to give somebody their coffee the way they want it. And on a cold day during a move-in, that might be just what it takes to be memorable.
Yeah, Scott's asking the same question. What have others done to create wow moments? Have anybody like to share what they do for their customers?
I'll jump in one more time and say, really, in marketing, I really modeled after Manhattan Mini that inspired me to really think outside the box with their advertising. I took what's the one I started with creating articles around death and divorce, and I was like, doesn't feel right. This is strange, actually. And so I went the entirely different direction, and I said, what is universal that we can all relate to? And for Trojan, it was music. And so we create a music podcast. We're on SoundCloud, Alexa, Amazon, Apple, find us. And we can connect with people through our music. We play music through our facilities, as most of you do. And that's, to make sure it's not creepy and quiet. But it's a good conversation piece. Oh, do you like, what kind of music do you like? Oh, we have a free music podcast. Share them in the QR code. And we have a whole library and multiple genres of music. So it's something that we create here in the marketing department. It's absolutely free to give away. And it's something that connects us all regardless of the age. And there's something there for everyone. So, minimal costs, just some of my time, but it's my passion. And I feel like that's, in terms of Ryan, that's my heart in those podcasts. And I hope, that gets put out and people share and people like it. And we've gone as far as customers have emailed and say, hey, this is a great podcast, or I have a band too. And we could even showcase that, send that email back out and say, hey, we have a rock star in our midst of our tenants. So, highlighting people, finding other things to talk about, being relatable, being human with them, I think is, how we can mitigate without having to spend too much money, humanize it and really connect. I'm sure you hear from your site staff that they're quasi-psychologists, they're coming in with all their problems. So how can we humanize it? How can you connect with them and make a friend?
I love that. That doesn't have to be storage related. We have a spin the wheel that it's an unexpected move-in gift.
Uh-huh.
So after they're doing their move-in, we says, oh, we want to say thank you. Why don't you spin the wheel? You get whatever you want.
Uh-huh.
It could be, free Starbucks card or a box of cookies or something. It's just something little, but it's unexpected.
Right.
That's the key. Something unexpected. People just remember.
To brag on some of the people who are on this call, because I have been wowed. There are people on this call that I have been a customer of, or I've been a strategic partner with, And I'll tell you that Randy Tipton, who's there, you can see her. Hi, Randy. She and her daughter, Jenny Bortman, sent me and several others of us, I'm sure, a lovely kit to put together a little succulent garden. And with all the instructions, it was hand packed. It was beautifully delivered. I followed the instructions. I learned when I called to say thank you that her son Levi had put it all together and helped initiate the whole thing. So it was there were 3 generations of Randy's love, her family love, on my table for a very long time until I unfortunately killed the plants. But I still have the happy memory of that. And Shannon Charbonneau and I have been doing business together, and Sherry and Andy, for a long time at XPS. And I'll tell you that Shannon remembers everything that we've talked about and we've done together. And when I raise something, it's not a surprise or something new to her. And she fits it into context and she puts it in the contract. And I love that there's no, there's no trying to demonstrate that, yes, this is what we discussed. This is what we were talking about. And she's got it all right here. And it's because she thinks about it, and she thinks about it ahead of time. She's intentional. Maybe she reviews her notes, or maybe she's got perfect recall. I don't know. But as her customer and as her partner, I've been the beneficiary of that kind of love. And I agree, Ryan, all you need is love. I mean, it's great songs too.
Yeah. And honestly, that's what it is, Anne Marie, because you and I love you. That's all there is to it. And I love Natalie, and I love John, and I love Pam, and I love Randy, and I love Scott Warden. And that's just truth right there. So Ryan, I would very much like to meet you in person. I've been on so many of these calls with you. That was so much fun. I've never heard anyone articulate it like that. I just thought it was something, quiet behind the scenes that we don't talk about in business, but I think that's how it should be. And I think it's more and more necessary in our post-COVID QR driven world, and everything remote and everything technology. People don't hear their names out loud very often anymore. I really, truly think that makes a difference. And, I think it does show love. And even when it is something you're having to deliver bad news, Pam, you're never going to delight somebody who you're selling their stuff. Sorry, I wish you could, but at least they're going to know you did everything you could, right? And they're going to know that they were loved right up until the day they didn't see their things anymore.
Bill, I might have logged off, but he says, make sure you know what delights your customers. What delights you may not delight them. And thank you for letting me participate today. So that's so true. Have a choice. I guess that's why we did the spin the wheel. So there's a few choices. And if they don't get what they want, we just give what they want.
That's cool. That's great. But, I know a company that does that with every employee that they bring on board. They ask,
that's great.
You feel loved. And them, it's an Amazon.
Compassion. Yeah.
Others, it's, I want you to buy a goat through Compassion International for this family over here that I support. And for others, it's, I love flowers, or I love concerts. And that way, when their birthday comes up, I'm not going to send Scott Warden flowers when I know what he loves is, what is it, Scott?
I'll take some flowers. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
All right, I'll send you the flowers. Shannon sent me flowers. I loved it.
But don't send me flowers. I'm allergic. I don't love them.
Oh, see, there you go. As Bill says, you have to know what delights customers.
That was an excellent point.
Yeah.
Not everybody is delighted by the same thing. That's absolutely
so
true. Yeah.
So true.
Can you think of companies that successfully demonstrate this approach to customer experience? When you think of like a brand that wows you, what do you think of?
Well, it's funny because she brought up Chick-fil-A during the whole conversation, and my family likes to frequent Chick-fil-A a lot, and we've noticed the, My Pleasures and how they go about their business. And that is part of the experience that we now expect, even when we go to other places.
Right.
And when it doesn't happen, then you're now, or let's say somebody does say My Pleasure at a different restaurant, you're like, they must have worked at Chick-fil-A. And that's kind of what we think.
brand ambassadors beyond their own.
Right.
They had red, white, and blue flowers on the tables around 4th of July. I was floored by that. Real flowers at a fast food restaurant.
Wow.
What else? What other companies really have brand connection, equity in your heart? I can think of someone who has a Nike on his.
Steve Ford says, my first experience with Chick-fil-A years and years ago was so positive. I still remember the name of the kid that helped me, Spence.
Wow.
I actually was just going to say there's a restaurant that my husband and I go to for special occasions, and it doesn't even matter the name, but it is a place where you go and you sit, and if you get up to go to the restroom, you can be assured that when you come back, you have clean cutlery next to your table.
Oh.
There's not a crumb. They've cleaned up your space. When you were gone, your water glass is filled while they didn't have to lean over you to do it. It's just, and they remember you from time to time when you come in, and they remember, oh, you were here for your anniversary. I can't believe it's been another year. And like you said, Anne Marie, I'll never know. Do they have our name from reservations in their system with a note that says, that it's our anniversary, or does that lady just remember? And frankly, I don't care.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter to me if she had to look it up before I walked in the door, because if she looked it up before I walked in the door, how sweet is that?
Yeah. Ruby says Trader Joe's, and I agree. They, you ask for where something is, they don't just point. In my experience, they always
guide you.
do the 5 steps like Gabriel said at Disney.
That's great.
I think Amazon does a good job in terms of it's quick and easy to return. They're continually looking for ways to make it easy to satisfy you. Whether they're reviews, they say verify, I don't know, maybe they're fake, but there's AI summarization of the reviews now. So they're really looking out for how does a customer shop?
Right.
How does a customer after the shop, what do they do? That's what we need to think, like, not just sell them, but what do we do after?
I think
for 5 years, what do we do for them?
Amazon is a major one. So much that we can't even appreciate how much Amazon has changed everything, every business, that we now expect things to be there in 2 days. We now expect that they're going to take our return, and they will go above it. They'll take a loss over and over to go meet that tenant's expectations, and has completely revolutionized everything in conjunction with social media. Social media has empowered our customers to have a voice, and now businesses need to care about what the customers say, because it can cause backlash and it can, hurt business. So I think Amazon has it absolutely correct. And again, we almost can't fathom how much they've changed the entire world's industry and how spoiled we are now. And Amazon did that, being a tenant forward, or a customer forward rather, company.
Yeah.
And speaking of Amazon, one of the practical ways in our operations, we try and create wow moments. Sometimes customers will call in and immediately they'll know they want a unit, need to move in, get it done in 5 minutes or less. Other times they're shopping around or they're not sure. One of the ways our managers just through their own discernment is, if someone's not really sure, but then we do convert them, it's, hey, I really appreciate your business and for choosing me. I know you have a lot of places to go. I'd like to mail you a $25 Amazon gift card. And we look at analytics, so I know the lifespan of this customer at this site is 16 months. Some of them are even longer than that. So for me, on a profit basis, that's more than reasonable and appropriate. I send $25 Amazon gift cards every month, and we are more than happy to do so, just to create that extra appreciation. Like, we didn't have to do this. They were already probably converting or giving them time, but hey, thanks for just being my customer, expecting the mail next week.
Wow, that's generous and nice.
Mm-hmm. And if
we are over an hour right now, so I don't know, Gabriel and Emma, if you want to wrap it up, and any other comments, questions? I
appreciate how Antonia Hock really called us to a higher standard. She pointed out what we sell is commoditized, and we differentiate ourselves with how we treat the people that we interact with. We're in a space where the data shows that brand is not considered to be a decision-making factor, a very high decision-making factor by the consumer when they're going to rent space. They're looking at price, they're looking at proximity, but we still have to stand out within those parameters. And so we leave you with the question, how can I incorporate this into what I do and how I do it? How can I build the discipline and build the new habits to love the customer, to treat them better than we want to be treated ourselves, and then get that kind of brand equity that companies like Amazon have achieved. I think that StoreQuest is an example of really effective branding in our space. It's showing lifestyle and helping people connect to the lifestyle of surfers and skateboarders, and why you as a surfboarder or skateboarder would want to store with StoreQuest, and how I want to be like those guys because they're heroes and they're well known, and gee, they use StoreQuest, why wouldn't I use StoreQuest? And that's an example of good branding in our space, and one that we can aspire to. But I'd like to thank everybody for participating. Ryan, I think that you gave us the foundation that we could build a house on. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure that your investors and your customers feel the love from you. How many times have we said, I'm not feeling the love? So
well,
thank you, Gabriel.
Scott said he highly recommends the Customer of the Future book. And so that was great. And Shannon saying, our homework should be what's wow and what's basic.
Yes.
I think that's a good takeaway homework for all of us.